Nitro with the nice flow. Y'all acting like y'all don't know. Stop acting like y'all don't know.
Joe Campbell.
Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Causing chaos in the back of the bus. Get your hands up. We gon' show you how we buzz. Yeah. The future.
On a suddenly not so casual free Friday, it is October 7th, 2022. It is CFB Knowledge for College Week 6. It is Sharky Waters Nation 9 Words of Lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. It is the gun. It is the shark. Guns picks. A beautiful Friday evening to engage. What's going on tonight, brother?
I want to say one thing. How good is this damn show? I mean, really, to the people that I'm speaking to right now, how good is this damn show? How many units did we win last week? What, 16 units? I think we are dominating the market as far as college football shows are concerned. You can watch whatever you want during the week, but guess what? 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Friday night. This is the show to watch for the best picks on the goddamn planet. I'm ready, Shark, for my picks. Let's go.
Speaking of being on planet Earth, we are centered. We are now. It is Free Friday, October 7th, 2022. One official play discussed earlier this week and made official days ago. A collaboration play, the Shark and the Gun. UNLV running Rebels on the road where they make money for us at San Jose State. Guns picks, unofficial.
Listen, you don't want to fade UNLV on the road. That is basically the key to this game. UNLV is 4-1 straight up coming into this game. After a home win against New Mexico, plus 59 net yards in that game. Now, San Jose State offense is not looking good so far this season versus non-conference schedule. They only average 368 yards per game as total offense, 3.1 yards per game on the ground. And their offensive line has struggled with a 9.6 sack rate. So they can get blitzed very hard. Also, UNLV in a double revenge spot in this game. They lost to San Jose State 27-20 as 4-point dogs at home in 2021. And they lost 34-17 on the road as 16-point dogs. So you can see that where the line regression is happening in this spot. Good spot for UNLV, in my opinion. They are red hot as far as covering the spread is concerned, and you actually probably can catch them at a contrarian spot. Everybody loves San Jose State overall. They love the Aztecs, but guess what? I am running with the Rebels here, +7 UNLV as the play.
Yeah, and as we said, alignment play, a lot going on here. Didn't discuss this prior, so we'll get into it now. But you're really starting to see in conference season line functionality, and it matters in conference far more than out of conference. And you go back to last year, we've been buying UNLV because this is a team that is literally riding an upward movement and a wave, if you will, to a very new sustained average. And I'd like to think that this began last year with the game against San Jose State. San Jose State came into Las Vegas last year on a Thursday night, October 21st, I believe it was. And they were favored in that game by 6 points. It was short, and they did cover it 27-20, but UNLV was 0-7 on the campaign at that point in time. The public was all over San Jose State, -6. And this team outscored UNLV 14-0 in the fourth quarter to cover the spread by 1 point. You get a revenge game, you get a double revenge game, you get a UNLV team that is 2-0 ATS on the road, 1-0 in conference. We had them 2 weeks ago to hammer Utah State, and you get a short line number for San Jose State. When you're 6 on the road, you should be 9 or 10. It's 7. It's short. It's where you want it. And San Jose State, to a degree, fool's gold. Beat down Western Michigan. Caught an Auburn team in the SEC who has burned us already. Very lackluster this year. All boxes checked. Top spot on this beautiful Friday night. UNLV +7 1 unit. Saturday morning, noon on the East Coast, October 8th, 2022. Guns picks. Eastern Michigan comes in here off a very lackluster performance last week against UMass and a horrendous loss the previous week to Buffalo. Now they come in here in the state of Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan, +5, an official.
Yeah, this is an official for me. Yes, I know the MAC is horrible non-conference, but once they get together, it is like the return of the MAC. And that is what you want to see here with EMU here. Listen, Western Michigan coming off a non-conference schedule, 1-3 straight up in that run. And their only win was against University of New Hampshire. And I think there's probably only one person that knows that team. It is myself because I lived in Maine. But I digress. EMU is 3-1 in non-conference play. Their wins against Eastern Kentucky, Arizona State, and UMass. But what you need to understand is what Eastern Michigan does on the road as a dog. They are 20-5 against the spread as an away dog dating back to 2016. This is a team that I've always been played on as a road dog and is a perfect spot against a Western Michigan team that I don't think is very good this year. Granted, they have been good in the past. Pure play on the away dog on this situation. Very situational play, in my opinion. Give me Eastern Michigan +5 as the play based on the trends.
I like that little pace. I'm feeling the vibe here. A little like boom, boom, boom.
It's a little bit of a slow, a little bit of Sunday with a little bit of Friday is what I'm trying to do.
Speaking of Friday, speaking of Saturday, we're going 12 noon. We're going straight back to Lawrence, Kansas, and we're taking Kansas +7. I talked about this midweek. Again, very similar idea to UNLV, a team that was incredibly, incredibly lackluster for an entire generation. The last time this team was even remotely representative was 2009. These kids playing now were, 4 or 5 years old. Speaking of kids that were 4 or 5 years old at that point in time, I bring you to third-year quarterback Jalen Daniels, who is turning the hell up in this campaign. It is a new generation of Kansas football. I see they're renovating the facilities. Lance Leipold coming over from Buffalo, absolutely rebooting, a team you want to consistently buy. And who do you want to fade this week? You want to fade TCU, coming in here to sandwich spot off a blowout win against Oklahoma, going back next week at home again against Oklahoma State. And you're catching TCU here, 2-0 ATS on the road this year. A blowout in first week at Colorado. Colorado is absolutely at the bottom of the Pac-12 this year. And then an equally unimpressive cover at SMU, who you guys just saw on Wednesday night get hammered at UCF. TCU is fool's gold, and this is the number you want to continue to buy Kansas. Kansas has lost 9 of 10 to TCU. And last year, they covered on the road in the beginning of this 8-0 ATS sample, which I do not think is stopping anytime soon. And the line was TCU -21. When you're 21 at home for neutrality in conference, it should maintain at 18, 17, or 16. This is down deep at 7. It's right where we had them last week in the Iowa State environment. I think Kansas could very well win this game yet again. Kansas +7, 1 unit. 3:30 p.m. SEC football. Georgia comes home off a really lackluster performance last week against the University of Missouri. Almost lost the game, in fact. Now they come home and they catch the opponent in a lackluster spot. First half, -17. Guns picks. I like this environment. I like this buy low off what was a dud last week. Talk to me.
Sharks said it best. It was the flattest of the flat games for Georgia. But I think Kirby Smart will get these guys right in this spot, especially against an Auburn team that is basically like lost hope altogether. Now, Auburn, you got them coming off a 21-17 loss to LSU. Last week as 8-point dogs. They did cover the spread, and also they were plus 168 net yards in that game, and they still lost the game. -3 turnover ratio, but there is a pattern with Auburn here. They are 1.8 turnover ratio this year. So basically, it's not just one game; it's every single game they turn over the ball. Now you look at this UGA team. Let's just break down their first halves here. They were so basically, if you break them down to the 4 of the 5 games, we're not going to talk about the Missouri game because that was a flat spot. But they were 28-3 at half against Oregon, 30-0 against Samford, 24-0 against South Carolina on the road, 26-13 against Kent State. So add them all up, 108-16 in the first half. What Georgia does is they kill your will early, and they basically take their foot off your neck gradually in the second half. So you have a spot here where you have an Auburn team that basically plays bad first half. If you want to go look at their first halves, I'll let you guys go and check the numbers on that one. Also, Auburn 2-8 against the spread in their last 10. This is not an Auburn team you want to back, especially a Georgia team that played absolutely flat against a Missouri team that absolutely stinks on ice. This is not a spot. Also, you have to look at the line of this, the matchups with this team. The biggest line that this matchup has ever had is Georgia -16, which is in 2021. Guess what it is now? -30. -30 for the game. But Georgia is a first half team. So take that into mind. I'm taking them at -17 in this spot, and I love it. So give me Georgia first half -17 as the play.
I love it. As we discussed before, I'm not waiting around. 3:30 p.m. We're going to Annapolis, Maryland, and we're backing the Navy midshipmen +6, 1 unit. A lot going on here, and this is the polar opposite of how I just capped the Kansas spot. Kansas had lost 9 of 10 to TCU, and the line is moving towards Kansas. Navy has owned Tulsa in the last 7 years since they started this series in conference, 6-1 straight up. And this doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. Navy plays a very unique style of football, almost exclusively on the ground. And it seems like Tulsa, no matter what their personnel is, cannot function within it. 6-1 straight up last 7. That is very sustainable. And the line is telling you a great story here. Go back 2 seasons ago. Tulsa did get them. The only time they've gotten them with their best team over the 7 years with some NFL caliber prospects on that unit, 21-9 in Annapolis, Maryland. They covered the spread by 1 point. It was an 11.5, and they won the game by 12. Based on line neutrality and line functionality, when you come home off a road cover, you should come up to 14 or 15. It came down to 10, and they lost the game outright. Now from 10, it should hold 7. It's short at 6. It's getting steamed by sharps to 5.5. And you look at Tulsa on their calendar right here, you find a great spot to fade this team. This team comes in here on an L2, but it's not your average L2. At Ole Miss, a 1-touchdown loss and a cover, which Guns Picks had correctly 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. And last week, conference home opener against Cincinnati, 31-21 loss, cover. So they've lost 2 in a row, but they've played up to big-time opponents 2 weeks in a row. And one final point, when you really cross Navy versus these conference opponents, it's not just they play Tulsa the same way every time. They get hammered by Memphis every time. They play ECU tight every time. It is their scheme. It is their run-heavy game. I think Navy could win this game outright. We're on it officially for +6, 1 unit. 3:30 p.m., Big 12 football, Texas Tech on the road in Stillwater. Guns Picks, +9.5, an official.
You have a team coming off the highest of highs, Oklahoma State on a double revenge, and we picked them last week, obviously, is one of my best bets of the week. Oklahoma State coming off the double revenge, like I said, 38-25, but they lost the net yardage battle, which is kind of intriguing to me, -78 net yards in that spot. Texas Tech coming off a tough road loss to Kansas State on the road after a big upset versus Texas. before that. So they lost 37-28 plus 14 net yards in that game. So they actually dominated the net yard battle, but they lost the game predicated on a big win over Texas. Now, Texas Tech is 3-2 for the season, but they face a very strong schedule. If you actually check their last 4 games, they played Houston, NC State, Texas, and Kansas State. Very strong competition, in my opinion. You actually look at Oklahoma State, who they face. Baylor is their best game of the season. And they face them after a bye week, so they're very prepared. So it's a situational play to take Oklahoma State in that spot. Now, Texas Tech has lost their last 2 meetings versus Oklahoma State. So it's a double revenge spot here. They lost 23-0 last year at home as 10-point dogs. Now Texas Tech is sitting here 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 versus Oklahoma State. Now Texas Tech 7-1 against the spread following an ATS loss. A road team in this matchup 7-2 against the spread in this matchup. Now Oklahoma State coming off the highest of highs, beating a team that beat them in the Big 12 championship. Texas Tech coming off a road loss. Now back on the road after a team that had a bye week in the situation. So like Texas Tech should be battle tested, and they face a very strong schedule. They should be ready for this Oklahoma State team. I like this Texas Tech team a lot. And you're getting 9.5 in this spot. Man, I'm going to take that all day long. Give me Texas Tech plus 9.5 as the play.
Yeah, I like it. And again, it's the zigzag effect, the emotional ups and downs of college football as teams play up and down within conference week to week. And oftentimes the energy reverses and the outcomes reverse very quickly in the next week. Next play, we're going Big Ten football. We're going to Northwestern in Metro Chicago area. And I see you guys out there. The best of vibes. I love Chicago. Taking it at plus 10-1 unit. A lot going on here. You have to look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin is not Wisconsin of yesteryear. Wisconsin is very down this year. Wisconsin is 2-3 on the campaign, and their 2 outright wins were a 38-0 blowout of FCS Illinois State and a 66-7 shellacking of New Mexico State independent FBS, a New Mexico State team that just lost to the notorious Florida International University. So Wisconsin has 2 wins against the absolute low level of bottom feeders. Against everybody else, this team is brutally uncompetitive. Washington State out of conference at home as a big favorite, outright loss 17-14. At Ohio State, 52-21, blowout loss. And last week at home, we had Illinois to beat them. Illinois sure as hell beat them 34-10. The other side of this game finds Northwestern in a unique environment. Northwestern is 2-0 within the Big Ten. Week 0 in Dublin, Ireland, they covered against Nebraska. And last week, they covered on the road against Penn State. This team is 0-3 ATS at home. However, they're 0-3 ATS at home, all outside of their conference, and all as a significant over 1 touchdown favorite. This is an environmental shift for a team that is very due to continue upward movement in their ATS average and finally cover a home game at home this year, and it will be within the Big Ten. Final point, similar to why we faded Wisconsin last week with the Illinois pick. Last year, Wisconsin did hammer Northwestern 35-7 at home on a minus 25.5. This line comes in at minus 10. When you're laying 25.5 year one and you cover at home and it comes down short at 10, it's telling you the numerical story of everything I just described. I think Northwestern could win this game outright, and I think this game will fall inside of a touchdown at the final tally. 1 unit official, Northwestern plus 10. 4 p.m. ACC football, Duke on the road off a big-time win last week, a 2-unit sharp special against the Virginia Cavaliers. This team is not cavalier. This team is turned up. Their run game is absolutely authoritative, and they get a chance to play Georgia Tech, a bottom feeder this year in the ACC. Guns picks, an official.
Listen, this is a pure fade of what Georgia Tech did last week against Pittsburgh. Let me tell you why. Let's start with Duke here. They're coming off a home win, like Chark just said, against UVA, 38-17 after a tough road loss versus Kansas, which is a half a point of covering the spread. They held UVA to 295 yards of total offense plus 82 net yards. Now let's talk about Georgia Tech. They're coming off that upset win, like I just said about Pitt, as a double-digit dog, 26-21, despite losing the net yards battle, minus 77 in that regard. Now we have to look at the Duke offense. What is Duke like to do? They like to run the football. They average 5.3 yards per carry, 200 yards on the ground. They have a three-pronged attack with Jalen Coleman, Jordan Leonard, and QB Riley Howard. So they have a lot of guys that can actually move the football on the ground. Now, Georgia Tech defense, not very good. They give up 284 yards on the ground to UCF, 316 to Ole Miss, and their pass defense is weak as hell as well. They give up 230 yards passing to four out of their 5 opponents this season. Now we're going to look at the situation, which I love to say. Double revenge. Double revenge. Guess what? Georgia Tech is in this spot right now. Duke lost to Georgia Tech 31-27 as a 4.5 point dog in 2021, 53-33 in 2020 at a pick'em. Duke has covered 7 out of the last 8 meetings. So with all that being said, all the statistics applied, I'm going to roll with the away favorite here, the Duke Blue Devils, minus 3.5 as the play.
I like it, taking a breath as we're 22 and a half minutes in. We appreciate you guys tuning in on a Friday night. We know people are out having libations, success, beautiful women, beautiful conversation. For those of you who are beautifully married, we see you guys in your beautiful relationships. We're proud to bring you the best possible content available on a Friday night. Of course, it is Sharky Waters Nation, 9 Words of Lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. Stay in course here. We're going to the Pac-12. We're going to Tempe, Arizona, and we're taking the Washington Huskies at minus 14, 1 unit. And a lot going on here. You're finding a Washington team that just lost in their conference road opener last weekend at UCLA. And Washington, a team that was absolutely dominant at home prior in the out of conference, 4-0 ATS. And I should mention 1-0 in conference, a blowout win against Stanford 2 weeks ago. But you come in here and you find a great merge dynamic where you want to be fading Arizona State. Of course, Arizona State did get rid of Herm Edwards after a brutal out of conference loss to Eastern Michigan in week 3. Since then, situational trends are developing. They're coming off of a road cover at number 6 USC. The game was not particularly close against the money line. Arizona State was close in the first half. Did lose the game 42-25 in cover. Prior to that, the corollary environment we're in here, home game against Utah. Utah ranked number 13 in the country. Utah laid 17 points. Utah did win the game going away 34-13, and it gets slightly better. If you look back at last week, that game really was a coin flip. Michael Penix Jr. came out a little anxious in the first half. 2 picks, unregulated, uncomfortable, outdoor on the road for the first time as Washington's starting QB. And then the game really tightened up. That was an outlier in the beginning, and they just couldn't catch up. This week should reverse itself. And the final point, you're getting, yet again, everything we want to see. This is a revenge game. Last year, somehow, because it wasn't Michael Penix Jr., it was a totally different Husky team, Arizona State did beat them on the road outright, 35-30. Arizona State was favored in that game, -6. When you're on the road and you win and you basically push right around it at -6, and you come back and books move the line against you 20 points, not even accounting for home advantage, should be about 23 points on this average. Washington is about to smack this team down. I have this game graded around 21 to 23.5 points. 1 unit official. 6 p.m., we're going to San Antonio, Texas, and we're taking a look at Guns Picks top play of the week. Western Kentucky comes into this game having started the season on fire ATS, only to lose at home last week to Troy, which, of course, the Gun did have officially last week. So when the Gun fades a team correctly and gets an outright win from a +7 dog in Troy, and the next week he's buying Western Kentucky, you better listen. +7 and the money line and a total. Guns Picks, talk to me.
Shark, I changed my mind about this one. I don't like this play at all. I have to, I don't like it. You know why? Because I love it. You know why? Because Western Kentucky is coming off a loss, like you just said, against Troy, 37-27. Net yards battle, they won that one plus 55. And UTSA is coming off back-to-back wins after their road loss to Texas. They beat Middle Tennessee State 45-30 last week, which really predicates. This is a box checker. Let me tell you why. Western Kentucky, potent offense. They beat their opponents on the run game, 4.8 yards per carry, 5.5 on the road, and the passing game, 353 yards per carry, 72.4 completion rate. QB Austin Reed says, Bailey Zappi, who? I'm better than Bailey Zappi. And this guy is actually proven out on this team. Now, UTSA struggles on the defensive side of the ball. They give up 450 yards passing in the last 4 games, 4.6 yards per carry on the ground, 63% completion rate as far as the passing goes. Western Kentucky, good offensive line. They only give up a 3.88 sack rate. These are box checkers, my friend. Now you have the double revenge. You want to know what the double revenge on this game? Guess what? They played each other twice last season, and Western Kentucky was a 3.5-point favorite in both regular season and in the Conference USA Championship. They lost one by 52-46, and the other one 49-41. And guess what? I'm going to be breaking out on this one. I am breaking out the play on hat. Western Kentucky as my best bet of not only this week, but the season, because I'm making this a 3-unit play. Western Kentucky, 3.5. Might as well sprinkle on the money line for an extra unit on that one, plus 211. And guess what? If you want to look at some trends on the over, both these teams trend towards the over in most of their games. And I think UTSA is going to be on a 7 to 8 games streak as far as the over is concerned. I like the 72, over 72, 1 unit, money line, and the +7 as the play.
Love it. Great take. Great hat. Buy hat engaged, I do believe. And I will be getting some buy hats in college soon. But we're staying course, and we're going out west, and we're going to the road team. Air Force -10 at Utah State. A lot going on here yet again. You got to look at Air Force. Air Force is coming off of a home non-cover against aforementioned Navy. They're 1-2 ATS in their last 3 ball games. They're 0-1 ATS on the road, but there's a lot of deep psychological reasoning to their non-covers. Their only non-cover on the road, their only road game at Wyoming. Air Force and Wyoming have a deep rivalry in that region. Last game, an American forces game, if you will. Navy versus Air Force. These teams always play each other tight. You guys watch Army Navy at the end of the year. It doesn't matter what the team's record is. The game's almost always a 1-possession game. That's what happened last week. And you catch a Utah State team who we did fade correctly with UNLV going back a couple weeks. This team is 0-3 ATS at home, and they are egregiously 0-3 ATS. Barely won a game against UConn, who's one of the worst perennial FBS teams. an outright loss to Weber State of the FCS, and hammered at home by UNLV, who they beat last year. Speaking of beating somebody last year, Utah State did beat Air Force last year on the road in a ridiculous environment. Air Force in that particular game was -9 at home. They were up by 11 points in the beginning of the fourth quarter, and Utah State had 2 long isolated touchdowns, 75-yard plus, I believe, 35-yard plus right at the end of the game. A complete, utter backdoor, isolated one play, no edge, break off a run type of plays, which are not sustainable. You can't rely on that to cover football games. And now you come on the road and you get the Air Force line number you want. -9 at home, no cover. Go on the road, should come down to 6, comes up to 10. All boxes checked. Air Force, I think, gets there with some authority here on Saturday night, Saturday afternoon out west. -10, 1 unit. Staying course with my plays. We try to balance the broadcast up as we both have 10 to 11 plays. Next play, I'm going to go quickly and I'll describe this as fast as humanly possible. Fastest 10 seconds if we can. Kansas State on the road at Iowa State. Last week, we faded Iowa State correctly at Kansas. Iowa State is purely a fade team. And when you see me taking a ranked team, what looks like a short number, I encourage you to always look back, and this is where line functionality becomes a model, to the previous season to see the environment, to see how short the line is or not. Last year, Iowa State did actually lay 6.5 points in Manhattan, Kansas, and cover the spread and win outright 33-20. So now they come home, and you get Kansas State showing significant upward movement with Adrian Martinez, who has been basically let out of prison, Scott Frost prison, coming over to Kansas State. And the kid is balling out. He's an early Heisman frontrunner. And I think you're going to see a sustainability here. You look at Iowa State. This is the same type of program that we're looking at with Utah State. They have some home wins, very, very lame, weak wins. Southeast Missouri State, Ohio out of the MAC, and they beat a lackluster Iowa team on the road. They're currently 0-2 ATS in conference. Home loss to Baylor. And, of course, last week, a really just grungy Leatherhead style of game, 14-11 loss in Kansas. I think it continues. Kansas State is a bye team, a bye environment, and really the type of quarterback we talk about with Jalen Hurts in the NFL, a disrespected quarterback with a new college program. You want to back Kansas State -2, -1 now. Naturally, I wouldn't talk you off a better line. Next play, Guns picks. The jersey is on. The fandom is alive. The photos are in the background. And it is the Shamrock Special, a game that has not been played since the fall of 2013. There was no Sharky Waters Nation then. There was no Shark in the Gun. We're blessed to be here now. Guns picks, an official.
Let me get this damn hat off because I don't need that shit anymore. Let's talk about the Notre Dame and BYU game here. This is the Shamrock Series, okay, folks? If you don't know anything about the Shamrock Series, Notre Dame has dominated this series. They are 13-0 straight up in this series. But let's talk about numbers here. They're coming off, Notre Dame's coming off a road win, 45-32, where they were plus 209 net yards in that game. They are kind of going up as far as the stocks are concerned. Granted, they have played very bad in Marshall, which is a lackluster spot after the Ohio State game. And then they almost got beat by Cal, a highly motivated team going into South Bend. But let's talk about BYU for a second. They're coming off back-to-back wins against Wyoming and Utah State. Very flat wins, in my opinion. They beat Utah State 38-26. with a +5 net yard average in that game, but they were a +3 turnover ratio, which was the difference in the game. Now you have Notre Dame coming off the bye week, well rested, well prepared for this game. This is their Super Bowl, folks. If you didn't know anything about the Shamrock Series, they put on the nice, cute uniforms. They look fresh, dressed like $1 million. And they go into every stadium, every neutral stadium into this game. And you also have them as a favorite, as a contrarian pick. And you also look at this from this perspective. Let's talk about BYU being ranked 16th in the country, living on a 3.5-point dog situation against Notre Dame. That should tell you something right there, because Notre Dame's not ranked last time I checked. Notre Dame's defense is way better. They're more athletic. Marcus Freeman is really getting this team together. I really like this guy a lot. He's a young, highly motivated guy. I think he's really delving into being a head coach. You have Tommy Rees, and you showed that against UNC. The offense, he understands where the offense is going. I think this team is going to run the ball a lot more. And what you're going to see is Drew Pine being a lot more comfortable against a BYU team in a Shamrock Series game on a neutral field against a BYU team that hasn't had any rest. Granted, they played Thursday or Friday against Utah State, and they played flat as hell. I think this is a good spot to take Notre Dame, and it's going to be a contrarian play altogether. Favorite contrarian play, which should give you an indication of where this game is going to go. Notre Dame's going to blow this BYU Cougar team out, and I'm going to take them at -3.5, and hopefully that line doesn't jump on Saturday. Take it now, -3.5. Notre Dame, Irish, hat on as the play.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned it, but the only other time BYU was at this position on the road numerically, +3.5 at Oregon, hammered. And I think it's telling you a damn good line story. Speaking of damn good line stories, we're going back to the Big Ten, and we're taking Old Reliable. I never thought I'd be saying this, but Illinois is Old Reliable. Illinois hosting Iowa, first half -2.5, game -3.5. And a lot going on here, but this is very similar to what we talked about with UNLV in Kansas. This is a program that was down for a period of years. Brett Bielema comes over, Tommy DeVito out of Syracuse, and a defense that is absolutely at the top level of college football in the Big Ten. And you're looking at an Iowa team coming in here. Iowa is very, very lackluster this year. Iowa opened the campaign this year with a 7-3 win against FCS, South Dakota State. I think at that time, people were saying a little bit, maybe a look ahead. They had the in-state rivalry game the following week against Iowa State, so it made sense. All right, they're not taking an FCS team seriously. Then they came back home against Iowa State as a favorite and scored 7 points and lost the game 10-7. Then they hammered a really poor Nevada team, caught Rutgers napping on the road, and did not cover last week in conference against Michigan. Now they go on the road to Illinois. Illinois is purely a team you want to buy on a week-to-week basis, and this line is telling you a damn good story. Last year, Iowa did beat Illinois 33-22 on the road at a -12. So you get a team, Iowa, laying 12 points at home. They should be 9, 8, or 7 on the road. If neutrality is expected, this line is telling you exactly what I just said. Illinois is your buy units. We're at -2.5 for the first half and -3.5 game. And one final point, when you really go down the calendar for Illinois at home, this team is a defensive juggernaut. 6 points allowed in the opener, 3 points allowed in the second one, 0 points allowed in the third one. 9 total points allowed at home in 3 ball games. And if you really go back to that game last year, Illinois was showing signs at the end of the campaign last year, just like Kansas, of becoming the team they are now. Iowa won that game by 10 points. Iowa had a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, and they had a pick 6 late in the fourth quarter. We talk about outlierish one-off plays that change the outcome of a game, which are unsustainable and you cannot rely on over numerous outcomes to cover spreads. Iowa covered that spread last year and won the game outright because of a 100-yard kickoff return and a pick 6 late. Illinois should have won that game. Illinois is going to remember that they lost, and they're going to remember this team has owned them for a period of time, and they're going to remember why and how they lost. Final point. I'm just going on because there's so much to discuss here. The total last year went over at 33-22. Now this is coming down to 36.5. And we talk about this all the time, the relationship between a total and an ATS side. This is telling you Illinois is not going to give up 33 points. Illinois is absolutely locked out on defense, and Iowa cannot score. 7 points against South Dakota State, 7 points against Iowa State, a bunch of trash outcomes. buy it, and we might actually have a play upgrade tomorrow afternoon because I love this spot. Illinois in the first half, -2.5, game -3.5. Guns picks, 7:30 p.m. South Carolina on the road. SEC, I believe, at Kentucky. Correct me if I'm wrong there. +6.5, 1 unit. Official. Talk to me.
And just to reiterate, I agree with Shark's take on Illinois completely because it was almost an official on my end. But let's talk about South Carolina. Let's talk about Kentucky here. South Carolina is coming off back-to-back wins. Granted, they've only played some lackluster opponents, playing Charlotte and playing South Carolina State. Now you look at Kentucky off a tough road loss against Ole Miss, 22-19 after winning their first 4 games versus inferior opponents. They've only beat Miami of Ohio, Florida. I consider Florida an inferior opponent, and Youngstown State and NIU. They were -171 net yards for the game last week versus Ole Miss. Now, South Carolina has a decent pass game. They have 257 yards per game, 65.7 completion rate. Spencer Rattler has 1,120 yards passing this season. Granted, the difference between the touchdown and the turn and the interception ratio needs to be fixed, but I think this is one of those good spots to take because guess why? I think Will Levis is a little bit banged up from the Ole Miss game. He may or may not play. If he does play, I still like the play. This reason why this line is sticking real short. Kentucky relies heavily on the passing game, by the way. Will Levis is the guy. He's the crutch of the team. However, South Carolina only gives up 54.9 pass completion rate to their opponents and holds their opponents to 42 yards below their offensive season average. And that, what I mean by that is take an opponent's offensive production, and it's below that by 42 yards every time they play South Carolina. And you want to see something, double revenge game. We have a double revenge here, folks. In 2019, the South Carolina beat Kentucky 24-7. We're not talking about 2019. We're talking about 2020 and 2021 here as 3-point favorites. Now look at 2020. South Carolina lost 41-18 as 11.5-point dogs on the road. Then 2021, they lost 16-10 at home as 4.5-point dogs. You're seeing the line regress here, folks. And now they are on the road only as 6.5-point dogs. The potential look-ahead spot for Kentucky as well. Throw this hat off because it's ruining my camera. Because they have to play Mississippi State, a really pivotal opponent next week. So I think there may be a potential look-ahead spot in this situation. You have a short line with South Carolina, who hasn't really been playing so well as far as the win-loss and the points are concerned. But I think this is a great spot to go and back the game Hawks. Give me South Carolina +6.5 as the play.
Next play. We are going on a Sunday not so casual. Saturday, October 8, 2022. It's Shark Motivation Numbers. Let's hope ride the way out of the water. Raleigh, North Carolina, the road team comes in here in a revenge game, a revenge campaign, and an opportunity to dominate as we get the music flowing. We try to reboot the energy 44 minutes live on Sharky Waters Nation. And you're finding a buy opportunity, 1 unit official, Florida State University, +3.5. Go back through this. This is the same generational buy. NC State has owned Florida State in the last 5 matchups straight up. You're getting a double revenge game. You're getting a line number. Last year, NC State did lay 3 points on the road in Tallahassee. Now they come home. This should come up to 6, 7, 8, or 9 off a 14-point win last year, and it's sticking short at 3, steamed up to 3.5. Whoever's betting North Carolina State, thank you for doing that. We're getting a better number here at 3.5. And you really go through Florida State. We've been buying this team almost every single week. We said this. Mike Norvell came over here, pandemic, ambiguity, roster moves, Jordan Travis, young quarterback. They started to catch their wind last year, and they started this campaign 4-0 ATS. Blowout against Duquesne, but really the two matchups were centered on here. A neutral site win on the road, technically, against LSU in New Orleans, where there was definitely a hostile crowd. Outright win, 24-23 on a Sunday night, September 4th. And the week after that, it was a bye week, actually. The conference road opener at Louisville. Florida State, we had them again on a line functionality spot in conference. Florida State minus 2.5, 35-31 victory. Last week was the first time they were really inflated at home as a favorite in conference in years. And they did lay down and lose to Wake Forest, 31-21. That game was decided early. A couple early turnovers. They got down. Jordan Travis's numbers for the game were not actually that bad. Not 3 touchdowns, 285 yards passing. This is a bounce back spot. And this is really where you catch NC State. NC State right here, in my opinion, a bit of fool's gold. Week 1 at ECU, non-cover 21-20, 3-0 ATS at home. This is exactly what we said with Northwestern. Northwestern is 0-3 ATS at home, all out of conference, all as a favorite. Now you get NC State 3-0 ATS at home, all out of conference, all as a favorite in a reversal direction coming in conference. Those covers came against FCS Charleston Southern, Texas Tech, where they covered by 2.5 points on a 12.5, 27-14, and they blew out UConn. The Texas Tech game was a 13-point outcome, and the yardage in that game was dead even. I believe Texas Tech actually had more yards than they did. The Clemson game last week, Guns Picks had it correctly. It's theoretically a bounce back. It's not. This team started out 4-0. They started out beating bullshit FCS teams, horrible FBS team in UConn, Texas Tech outlier statistically versus peripherals. This is FSU's game, and this is where we want to buy. FSU plus 3.5, 1 unit. Guns Picks, alignment, I believe.
Shark, play my music. Shark, play my music. That's right. The buy on hat is on for FSU. Shark hit all the check boxes, and I'm going to give you a little bit more on that one. Listen, Florida State has done well defending the pass. Only given up 237 yards passing versus Wake Forest, which is a tremendous passing offense last week. 179 yards passing on average. Their defensive line is absolutely strong. 14 sacks this season, 9.3 sack rate in that regard. Now look at the double revenge like Shark just mentioned. They lost to NC State 28-14 as 2.5-point dogs at home. 2021, they lost 38-22 at NC State as 10.5-point dogs in 2020. They are sitting here as 3-point road dogs this season. That is a key indicator here, folks. Watch the line move year to year. This is an FSU team that is very hungry, very fast. Mike Norvell is fighting for his job. And guess what? NC State is not going to win this game, folks. This is an FSU game, especially coming off the loss to Wake Forest at home. These boys are road dogs. You saw them against Louisville a couple weeks ago in prime time. They stepped their game up when their lives are on the line. Give me the Seminoles +3 all day.
We do not prepare that. We just know each other so well. Shout to the gun. Great partnership here. The beginning of eternal domination. College football. Knowledge for college. Sharky Waters Nation. 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water, baby. Last play, 8 p.m. We're going Sun Belt, my favorite conference to bet. And we are fading Coastal Carolina yet again. You saw Coastal Carolina last week. We had Georgia Southern +10. Coastal Carolina, 17 unanswered points in the last 4 minutes of the game. This team is playing with fire. This is a 5-0 team that is trying to lose a ball game. They can't keep doing this, and they're nowhere near these spreads. And you're finding a team, ULM here, coming in here with situational trends you want to really buy. ULM is 0-3 ATS on the road, but at Texas, at Alabama, and last week at Arkansas State in the conference road opener, which was a letdown because the previous week in the conference home opener, they did beat Louisiana Lafayette outright as a dog 21-17. This team is 2-0 ATS at home this year. They're 2-0 straight up. They're 1-0 ATS and won outright as a dog in conference. And Coastal Carolina last year beat down this team 59-6. 59-6. The line was around 33.5, I believe, and it's coming all the way down to 14. This is the same environment you saw last week with Georgia Southern. I think ULM could win this game outright. I think Coastal Carolina is on the brink of an outright loss, and this flirtiness with disaster cannot continue to hold its course. Official play, the Warhawks of ULM in the Sun Belt plus 14. Last play, 11 p.m., Pac-12 football. Stanford comes home off a couple real tough road spots. Stanford this year is not classy on the road. They come out real flat. They get hammered, if we're being perfectly honest. But they come home and they get Oregon State, who is lackluster on the road and is in a tough travel spot. 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock out west. Guns picks. Stanford plus 7, unofficial.
You want a degenerate special? I will give you a degenerate special, but I think this is a sharp degenerate special. Let me tell you why. Look at Stanford. They are off back-to-back road losses and one home loss since their win over Colgate, which is not a remarkable win in that regard. But look who they played. They had to play USC, at Washington, at Oregon. All ranked opponents in that regard. In most of those games, other than Oregon, the game was decided by turnovers. They were -4 turnover ratio versus USC, -3 turnover ratio versus Washington. Now you look at Oregon State. They're off back-to-back losses versus USC at home, which was a loss at the last minute with a touchdown. Jordan Addison, I think he got a touchdown in that one, but it was all predicated on the turnover ratio. They lost the turnover ratio, -4 turnover ratio, only lost by 3 in that game. Last time Stanford was at home, they played USC and was able to move the ball very well. Now, if you actually look at that game, they actually got to the red zone a bunch of times, kept turning over the ball, but they actually moved the ball real well. So that always stuck in my mind with Stanford. Now, Stanford is in a revenge game as well. They lost to Oregon State 35-14 last year as 12.5-point dogs. Now they're sitting here at 7.5-point dogs in this spot. Stanford is 9-3 against the spread and 10-1 straight up versus Oregon State since 2010. So I'm playing on the fade of Oregon State on the road versus a Stanford team that is just hungry for a win. And I know they have it in their minds. I love Tanner McGee. As long as he doesn't turn over the ball, Tanner McGee. That is my guy, and I'm going to be riding him in this spot. I see the short line at +7. I think it's a complete trap on people trying to buy on the Oregon State money train. I'm going to take Stanford +7.5. +7 as the play.
Love it. And that is the show. CFB Knowledge for College, week 6, Friday, October 7, 2022. Just a recap of the picks. I have 11 plays on this board. Starts in a half hour here. UNLV on the road. Stand up, boys, at San Jose State +7. 12 noon, Kansas +7. Navy +6. Northwestern, Big Ten football, 3:30 p.m. +10. Washington -14 on the road. Revenge at Arizona State. Air Force -10. K-State -2. Illinois, the Illini, again, the demolition upward movement tour continuing. First half -2.5. Game -3.5. FSU, you heard it. Music on domination. upward movement. Jordan Travis, Mike Norvell continues here, plus 3.5 1 unit. ULM, Sunbelt, plus 14. Guns picks, alignment, UNLV running Rebels, let's dominate. Eastern Michigan, plus 5 at noon. MAC football, 3:30 p.m. Georgia first half, minus 17. Bounce back off a lackluster dud at Missouri last week. Texas Tech, plus 9.5 at Stillwater. Duke on the road, rushing game domination, minus 3.5. Western Kentucky, plus 7, plus 211 money line, and over 72. Notre Dame, fandom and sharp play, minus 3.5. South Carolina, plus 6.5. FSU alignment, plus 3.5. And Stanford late night special, plus 7, 10 p.m. on the East Coast. It is Sharky Waters Nation, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave out of the water. Guns picks, a pleasure. Close them out with some hype, some words, some love, and respect. And we appreciate you guys immensely for your interactions, your desire to be incredibly intelligent and prosperous and grow with us in this beautiful life. Guns picks, talk to the people, and let's dominate.
Dude, thank you for everybody in the chat. We've had 30 plus viewers on YouTube and over 100 viewers on Twitter. Appreciate you guys for watching us live. Please like and subscribe to the Dad Bod YouTube channel and us. That's what we want from you guys. That's all we ask for the favors. We give you the sharpest content on the goddamn planet, and we do it absolutely for free. Please, that's all we ask from you guys. Till next time, we're going to join you Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, let me say this. Saturday, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to do a live Twitter for all you guys. You bring the plays, I bring the opinions. You can go and fire those for me for 30 minutes. You get 30 minutes of my time, and I will interact with you boys, everybody live. So, till next time, thanks for joining, and peace.